Hi, I'm Fern Shaka, Professor of Chemistry and Associate Dean in the College of Science at Utah Valley University. I'm going to introduce you to three remarkable young women scientists. Each of these young women came to UVU out of high school. They each chose different sciences to major in, but they had one thing in common. They all did undergraduate research. This decision to do undergraduate research changed their lives. They'll tell you their story. The first is Dr. Emily Judd. Dr. Judd is a paleoclimatologist. What in the world does that mean? Well, stay tuned, she'll let you know. Dr. Judd came to UVU and decided to major in geology. Once she finished her degree, she went to Syracuse University in New York to get a PhD. And now she is a postdoctoral researcher at the Smithsonian Institution. That sounds pretty impressive, and indeed she is doing a remarkable work. Dr. Judd credits most of her success to what she did as an undergraduate and the experiences she had as an undergraduate researcher at UVU. Here's Emily.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much for having me. So my name is Emily Judd, and I am a paleoclimate research scientist, which means that I reconstruct ancient climates. So I grew up in Massachusetts and moved to Utah, where I attended Utah Valley University, majoring in geology and minoring in philosophy. From there, I went to upstate New York, where I got a PhD from Syracuse University in earth sciences. And I am now currently a postdoctoral fellow at the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History.
And I understand you're actually working in New Zealand. So you have had quite the path from Massachusetts through Utah, New York, and now Auckland, New Zealand. How wonderful. Science can take you all over the world. When did you first realize that you loved science and that you wanted to be a scientist?
Yeah, so I've always really loved science and math, and they were some of my favorite subjects in school. But starting university, I didn't know that that's what I wanted to major in. And I actually tried on a whole bunch of different majors, ultimately settling on philosophy. But at the same time, I had gotten really into rock climbing, and I noticed that different rock types weathered in different ways and made different holds. And so sandstones weathered and made these really smooth jugs, and the limestones weathered to make these really sharp pockets. And I kind of wanted to find out why. And so I enrolled in an introductory geology class, and by the end of the first class period, I knew I had found my calling. It combined everything that I loved: logic, problem solving, a hands-on approach, math, and being outside. And so despite the fact that I was on schedule to graduate with a degree in philosophy, I actually just switched my major and I haven't looked back since.
That is wonderful. So once you realized you wanted to be a geology major, how did you get involved in research when you went to UVU?
Yes, so my research project came about completely organically. I was taking an introductory meteorology class from a new faculty, Dr. Zanassi. And during one of his lectures, he mentioned his research, and he was a paleoclimate scientist. And it sounded really interesting. So after class, I went up and I asked him about it. And he sent me one of his papers. And so I went and I read it and understood almost nothing, but wrote this really long list of questions and brought it back to him. And we started having discussions about paleoclimate and about his research. And ultimately, these discussions evolved into my undergraduate research project and my career.
Well, so how then, a little more specifically, how did that research at UVU contribute to your current success?
Yes, so conducting research as an undergraduate is an amazing opportunity. I think oftentimes, because science is taught as these concrete facts and concepts, that I just never realized how much is still unknown about the natural world. And by reading scientific papers and conducting my own research, I really saw how many open questions there are. And that's when I first became aware that I could make a career out of doing what I loved. And my research with Dr. Zanofsky just taught me so much about the scientific method, about how to work in a lab, how to form and test hypotheses, interpret data, write a scientific paper. And I actually even got to present our research at a national conference where I met my PhD supervisor.
Wow, that is great. I love your story. It's such a wonderful, wonderful example of what a woman can do in science. And last question, what is the most interesting research that you have been involved in? And what are the questions that you're trying to answer in that research?
Yes, so I have been fortunate enough to be able to pursue a number of different passion projects over my career. But my current research with the Smithsonian is really just my dream project. So essentially, I'm working to create a curve of Earth's global temperature over the last 500 million years. And so we're doing this by collating all sorts of data about what temperatures might have been at a specific place at a specific time. And we're integrating these with climate model simulations that are run over the last 500 million years that tell us what the Earth might have looked like. And essentially using statistics, we're marrying the data and the models to find the maximum agreement between the two. And in doing so, really reconstruct what the Earth looked like. Um, and so this is just a huge scientific accomplishment, and it's also an amazing educational outreach tool to teach the public about the history of the Earth.
Wow, that is an amazing project that you're working on. Congratulations to you and getting your doctorate and being a postdoc, and best of luck to you in your career and in your life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
The next scientist you'll meet is almost Dr. Lauren Williams. Lauren does research and studies the science of how the human body moves. This is called biomechanics. Lauren came to UVU as an undergraduate out of high school and decided to major in exercise science. She worked on a lot of very fun and interesting research projects as an undergraduate student in exercise science. Now she's moved on to graduate school at BYU and is working on her PhD. One of the most interesting things about Lauren is that she won a National Science Foundation fellowship. This award pays her to go to graduate school. But you may not know this. Anybody who gets accepted to a graduate school in a STEM field, whether you're a National Science Fellow Foundation awardee or not, will get paid to go to graduate school. And that is really exciting. Let's hear from Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren Williams, and I grew up here in Utah. I went to Judd High School in Nephi, and then I went on to get my undergraduate degree at UVU in exercise science, and I'm currently at BYU studying exercise science as well, but I'm in their graduate program.
Great. Tell us, when did you realize that you loved science and that you wanted to be a scientist?
The very first time that I realized I really loved science and that I wanted to be a scientist was actually at SheTech. So when I was in junior high school, I came up to SheTech at UVU with a few of my friends, and we listened to a surgeon and a chemist and a physicist, and I just loved hearing them talk about how much they loved their careers and what kind of work they were doing. And that was the first time that I realized, like, oh, I want to be a scientist. I could do that.
And love that SheTech had such a big role in your life. That's wonderful. So when you came to UVU, how did you get involved in undergraduate research?
So I actually got involved with undergraduate research just by talking to a professor after a class. So I took biomechanics from Dr. Standiford, and I loved it. I loved that it combined math with the human body. And so I approached him and just said, hey, do you have any research I can get involved in? involved with? And he said, yeah. And so that was my first research experience, was just asking a professor and getting involved.
So along those lines, so you had some great research experience at UVU with Professor Standiford. How did that research contribute to your current success?
Yeah, so I would say that like my proudest accomplishment is that I got a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship, and it's a pretty prestigious award. And when I was applying for it, my entire application was just filled with my research experiences at UVU. So from the research that I did at UVU, I was able to get a peer-reviewed published article, as well as just a lot of research skills. And then also through that research, I became great friends with several professors that were able to write me letters of recommendation. And so it was really my research experiences and the just relationships that I gained from that that made my application so strong. And so I really credit my undergraduate research with my ability to get the NSF fellowship, but also get admitted into graduate programs.
Oh, that's wonderful. So what is the most interesting research project that you've been involved in, either as an undergraduate student at UVU or now in your graduate program?
Even though I've been involved with a lot of research since my time at UVU, I still think the most interesting was probably my first research project at UVU. So for that project, we wanted to know what the difference was between carrying a baby in a baby carrier versus carrying it with your arms. And we just wanted to know how that affected the person that's carrying the baby, and specifically how it affected their lower legs. And so we had a bunch of different girls come in, and we had them walk across a force plate that had a treadmill that had a force plate in it, and then also use motion capture technology. And we just had them walk with the baby carrier and their arms free versus carrying a baby in their arms. And from that research, we found that, the baby carrier is most similar to just walking normally. And it's actually probably better for the person's knees versus carrying the baby with your arms. And so I really loved that project, and it has a special place in my heart because it was my first research experience. But I really loved that project and think it's really interesting.
It is really interesting. Thank you for that. Did you use real babies or
No,
simulated babies?
Yeah, it was just an infant dummy that had the weight distributed like a real baby would. So it wasn't just like a baby doll, but a little bit more than just a baby doll.
Human-like.
Yes.
So interesting. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for spending some time with me today, and good luck to you in the future. And
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
The last student you'll meet is Dr. Caroline Anderson. Kara came to UVU and decided to major in biology. And like the others, she decided to get involved with undergraduate research in the biology department. This research took her to China, and it took her to Europe several times. How exciting is that? She traveled the world as an undergraduate student doing research. Now she's in medical school at the University of Utah and will soon become a medical doctor. Let's hear from Kara.
So I'm Kara Anderson. I grew up in Fairview, Utah, and went to North Sanpete High School, and then went to Snow College from there for about a year, and then ended up at UVU for my undergrad. Right now I'm at the University of Utah. I'm a fourth year medical student.
Well, thanks, Kara. Tell us, when did you first realize that you loved science and that you wanted to be a scientist?
Yeah, so I think for me, it was in high school. I had a really, really amazing science teacher. And kind of the first time that I got engaged in any class, to be honest. I was just into sports back then. But it was kind of him and his direction and just his love for science that made me want to be interested in it at all.
When you came to UVU, how did you get involved in undergraduate research?
Yeah, so I just I had a lesson from Dr. Kopp, who ended up being my mentor, and I just went and asked her if we could do this project. She was talking about antimicrobial characteristics of fungi, and I wanted to go to medical school, so I kind of put two thoughts together, and she was just like, write me a paper and prove to me that this is something that we should do and that you actually want to do it. And so I wrote a paper for her, and she was convinced.
That is really, really cool. So you actually talked to the professor and started working with her. How has that research led to your current success?
I mean, without that research, I wouldn't have gotten into medical school. So that research was kind of everything. I mean, it took me all over the world. So I went to China twice, and Japan, and then Europe, so Austria and Italy, just presenting that research and getting to know other teams over there. So yeah, I wouldn't have gotten into medical school without that research.
What was the most interesting research project that you worked on?
Probably what we did in Austria was really cool. We used extracorporeal shockwave treatment on a certain species of fungi just to see what it would do to chronic wounds, to see if we could heal those faster.
That's a big word, extracorporeal. It sounds like a ghost or something.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Kara, and good luck in medical school. And thank you for sharing your love of science and for UVU with us.
Yeah, thank you. It was my pleasure.
You've just heard from 3 outstanding young scientists. This could be you. When you get to university, talk to your favorite professors about the type of research projects that they do and ask them if you could join their group. Faculty just love when students ask questions and show interest in the science that the faculty member loves. Visualize yourself outside of the classroom. Science is not just a bunch of random static facts to memorize. There is so much more. There's so much to learn and to discover, and you can be part of that. In fact, if you could make a discovery right now that would help our world be a better place, what would it be? I hope to see you at UVU.